Let's get more analysis on this from Marina Miron, who's a researcher at the War Studies Department at King's College in London. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on. As an expert in conflict and resolution of it and tactics, what do you think about, because it does seem, whatever anyone thinks of how he's done it, it does seem like Donald Trump is moving this conflict towards, in the direction of some kind of peace deal. What do you think about the way he's done that?
It is quite interesting, Donald Trump's approach, because what we have seen for the past 3 years, there has been an isolated approach to involve Russia by Viktor Orban, who traveled first to Kiev and then to Moscow. However, he doesn't have the political weight, and the EU Commission was very clear that he was not representing the European Union. Therefore, because we have two warring parties, there has to be an involvement of both parties at the negotiating table. And we see that the military situation on the battlefield is swaying or has swayed for the past year in Russia's favor, with the Ukraine being on the defensive and losing more and more territories. Therefore, it is important to speak to Russia as well, to include Russia in these talks in order to reach some sort of a ceasefire. And from the Russian perspective, they are not in a hurry because they see that the political climate is very volatile in Europe. They are winning on the battlefield. They are very distrustful of the West. Therefore, there is a hope that Donald Trump administration, from the American perspective, can work to reestablish this frozen relationship with Russia and this basic trust in order to pave a way forward to end the war in Ukraine. And this is why Ukraine is not involved at the stage, because first there needs to be a relationship working, a diplomatic relationship as well. We know about the Russian and the American embassies in respective capitals. It has to be established in order to have that minimum trust in order to move forward.
I mean, the main reason I would say that we're heading towards some kind of peace is the fact that the US seems to have just said we're not going to support Ukraine anymore, militarily, financially. If it was a really, really bad deal on the table for Ukraine and they didn't want to take it, is the EU capable, does the EU have the appetite to fill the void and continue to support Ukraine to the extent that it could keep on fighting?
Well, this is very problematic because we have to see this from the U.S. perspective. For the U.S., they wanted to resolve the war in Ukraine in order to focus on other priorities, including domestic priorities. So the war in Ukraine is actually a disturbance. Now, let us assume, we're theorizing now, the US drops support to Ukraine and the European countries will be left to support Ukraine, and there is commitment. One thing is, of course, money, because there are investments into defense spending that have to be increased as part of the US pressure on NATO. And we don't know what is going to happen with the US troops and with the US nuclear shield that is protecting Europe. So we have that issue. We also have the issue of the defense industry that is very much dormant. It has been trying to revive itself due to the war in Ukraine, but it's nowhere near competitive compared to the United States one. So we have these problems. Even if there is enough money for the European Union and the UK to pour into Ukraine, the question here is how quickly can you turn that money into actual weaponry that Ukraine needs. Not to say that you also need to train Ukrainian troops, you need to deliver more air defenses, and air defenses are one thing. For instance, NATO has only 5% of the air defenses it needs on the European continent, and manufacturing those systems takes years. So you have the problem of time. Even if you have the money to support Ukraine, you don't have the time to procure whatever Ukraine needs right now or needed yesterday.
Marina, in the process of bringing a peace negotiation closer to manifesting, President Trump also seems to be looking after the financial aspect from America's side of things. Is this something that we should have seen coming? Is it common in times of conflict for a president to change and a country to do a complete U-turn like this? Or is Donald Trump profiteering from this? Is he just trying to make money from a weakened Ukraine?
I think we have to look at Donald Trump and study his character a little bit more carefully, read his books, because he explains very well his approach. And I think what makes him different from other politicians is that he actually does what he says. And he's a businessman, he's an investor, and he wants returns for his investment from his perspective to benefit America. And so if we use that lens to analyze Trump's behavior, then it becomes clear that it's only logical that Donald Trump would look for some sort of returns for investment. Even if there is a dispute between Ukraine and the United States, whether those were grants or loans and whether Ukraine owes anything to the United States, regardless of that, there is an interest in Ukrainian natural resources. There is an interest in finding new investment opportunities for Donald Trump as a businessman, as well as Donald Trump, who is looking after his country, because we have to understand the importance of rare minerals right now for advancing the AI race, for all sorts of space exploration, the use of space for defensive purposes. Therefore, rare minerals will be very important. And I think this is why Trump has adopted this strategy, because he can work with both Russia and Ukraine in order to obtain those necessary minerals. Also, Canada is another country that is of interest to Trump. So if we look at the whole picture, we see that there is always some sort of an interest of the United States in all these countries. And I don't think that the war per se was determining Trump's action when it comes to his interests in natural resources.
Marina, thank you so much for joining us. Marina Miron from King's College London there. She's a researcher at the War Studies Department. Thank you.